the CineSnob Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 330 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafana. Joining me this week are Kiko Martinez and the returning Jocelyn Durand. And I'm going to start off hot with a little bit of controversy.
Uh-oh.
So, Jocelyn, you were out last week, and I don't know if you listened to the show, but I'm judging by what I'm about to say, you didn't listen to the show. Because towards the end of the show, I mentioned that you were not the biggest fan in the world of one of the movies we covered last week, Bring Her Back. Yes. I made a comment about that at the end. At the end, Kiko also made a comment along the lines of, in reference to you, maybe we shouldn't bring her back. And so I'm just wondering, Jocelyn, if you have any comments on that.
I totally forgot I said that. That's funny.
Man, I'm so mad I didn't hear that. I did not listen to the episode, but I would have loved to hear that because I did not like that movie, Kiko. Oh my God. I was so mad I missed last week's episode because I really wanted to tear into this dumb movie, especially because I was so scared of it. I was like, oh no, this is going to be really scary. And it was so bad. I hated it.
I think we were pretty close on grades. Cody barely didn't recommend it, and I barely did. So,
well,
yeah,
Jocelyn, I think Jocelyn would have been far. I would have guessed that Jocelyn's grade in
the way she's talked about it,
how she's talked about it, would be like a C- is what I would say.
I thought it was preposterous, a lot of it, especially like the Child Protective Services stuff. Like, I mean, it would have been an easy, like, and the fact that they're like, oh, well, she works there, that resolves the fact that nobody ever checked on these children is so preposterous that I just couldn't get past that. And then all the like gross out stuff, I was just like, this is so gimmicky and dumb. I really didn't like it, but I'm glad that y'all had me back. I'm glad that you brought me back, Kiko.
Of course. We didn't have to use any cult voodoo or anything like that.
We watched a VHS tape about how to get rid of you, but we couldn't figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it was like in Romanian, and there was no explanation of why.
Yeah,
that's the one part that I rolled my eyes at. I told Cody that's the way that I check the car battery is when I'm on a YouTube DIY, like checking it and like, okay, I got to do this next, and that's how she was trying to save that.
There was some people I read online who were like, I love that there was no backstory about where she found it. And I'm like, that's so dumb. Like, that makes it way worse.
They don't have a backstory with Jumanji and how they found that.
Yeah.
Excellent point. And that is where I honestly, that's my like litmus test. I always like am like, what about this? What about Jumanji? I really always just like
go back to Jumanji.
Look, we can't talk about this movie because Jocelyn missed her chance, and so
you're right. I'm sorry.
The book has closed. The door is closed. You are done. You cannot talk about this any further. Start your own YouTube channel if you want to rant about this.
Got it.
But we have a couple of things to cover early on. Number one, I last week I missed this, but last week was the 11-year anniversary of the CineSnob Podcast. We started 11 years ago,
wow.
Like a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Just one of those things where, like, I was reading that that Mark Maron's podcast is ending.
That's right.
And that is ending after 15 years. And we've been going for 11 years. And it felt like his podcast has been around forever, but it's only been 4 years more than ours, which is kind of crazy.
And we're just as popular. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's like 1A, 1B in terms of popular podcasts. But we've come a long way. We were actually, and it's funny to think about how we were actually a little bit like ahead of the curve when we kind of started that. Where like we were buying actual equipment and like we had like a mixing board and a recorder and stuff like that. So
and we were doing it in person, like in an actual like little studio, like most like proper, I guess, podcasts do.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Like our good friends at Joe Rogan and stuff like that. We were doing it in person.
Well, congratulations! I did not give you guys a gift. I don't even know what the 11th anniversary is.
Well,
it's cash. It's cold hard cash.
The only person who is worthy of a gift, to be honest, is me because I'm the only person who's been here every episode.
That's
and
right.
You're so humble.
He's like the John Stockton of
Kiko bailed, and then Jocelyn bailed, and then Jared bailed, and then look who's been here the whole time, running everything is little old me.
Mm-hmm.
So little old.
I think that's why you're more jaded than we are. You've been doing it for longer.
No, that's definitely true. I'm sick of this shit and I'm done. But we're still, going ahead and doing the best we can. The other thing to talk about this week is an event that's going on at Alamo Drafthouse that I wanted to kind of just kind of promote because we're going to be talking about it a little bit later. But this year, Alamo Drafthouse is doing in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Jaws. They are returning the event Jaws on the Water. That is an event that Alamo Drafthouse does as part of their Rolling Road show at Valente Beach Resort and Water Park in Leander, Texas on Lake Travis. And it's a really cool event where they have this big blow-up screen and then everyone gets a tube and everyone just gets in the water and watches Jaws. And there's like fireworks celebrations when the shark blows up. You get a trip to the water park that's there at Valente Beach Water Park. And the folks at Fonz PR are allowing me to go on July 26th. So I'll be going. I actually went several years back. So they did this maybe like 6 or 7 years ago the last time. And the only show I could go to was Jaws 3. And they did Jaws 3 with Master Pancake.
Jaws 3 is the amusement park one.
This is the Michael Caine one.
Oh, okay.
Where Jaws
Michael
seeks
Caine's
revenge.
Part 4.
Are you sure about that?
Ooh, am I right?
So.
Is it
Jaws
the amusement SeaWorld?
Jaws 3 is 3D.
Oh,
okay, well then maybe this was Jaws 4 because this was the Michael Caine one.
Okay.
So I guess it was Jaws 4, the Revenge, because it's where Jaws gets revenge, yeah. And so it is the Michael Caine one. So it was with Master Pancake, so they were doing commentary, like making fun of the movie, kind of like Mystery Science Theater style.
Right.
And it was really fun, and I had a great time at that. And I didn't see it when I was there, but they're supposed to have like also people in scuba gear, like grabbing your feet in the water while the movie plays. To scare the shit out of you. And so, that's going to be going on. It's 4 dates. One of them already passed on June 7th, but it will also be June 21st, July 12th, and July 26th. If you buy a ticket, you can either get a ticket by itself or if you pay a little extra, you can get a custom float in tube to watch the movie in the water. It's a really cool event. It also coincides with they're doing which I wish I could go to. They're doing a show on Martha's Vineyard where they're having like an orchestra play alongside the movie.
Oh my gosh!
Where the movie was shot in Martha's Vineyard. Yeah.
They used to do this a lot, like the rolling road shows. I saw the Warriors on Coney Island that summer. The same summer they did the Martha's Vineyard one for Jaws, and the Warriors on Coney Island was super cool. Everyone was like dressed up and like, talking back to the movie. Did you go to the one at the New Braunfels wakeboarding place?
I haven't been to that one. The only rolling road show I've been to aside from Jaws on the Water was I went to a screening of Evil Dead in the Woods with Bruce Campbell there.
That's cool.
That was pretty fun.
Where was the Jaws on the Water? Was that the one in Dallas? You went
to
that one?
It's the one at Lake Travis.
Lake Travis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. They used to do it at the in a New Braunfels location. I can't remember, but
are you talking about Texas Ski Ranch in New
Yes,
Braunfels?
that one. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
I'd be into the listening to the actual orchestra. I've seen those before. I've never been to one before though. But
the orchestra stuff.
In the water for it.
I mean, it's pretty. There's no better way to watch that movie. And also, one of the movies that we're talking about today, Alamo Drafthouse, also premiered at this same venue. In the water, with the whole ordeal for Dangerous Animals, one of the movies we'll talk about a little bit later today. So if you want to get tickets to that, go to drafthouse.com and look up Jaws on the Water. Again, if you're in the San Antonio, Austin, Texas area, it's just the coolest kind of way to watch Jaws. And for me personally, Jaws is probably in my top 5 movies of all time. It's an all-time favorite for me. So
hey, don't forget your floaties. We don't want to hear any bad news coming from Leander, Texas.
I know how to swim, so we're good there. It's amazing how I got older as an adult, and I realized how many adults don't know how to swim. I didn't know that until I got a little bit older.
Well, in the words of Andre the Giant, I can only doggy paddle.
I love that part. Oh, man.
All right. So anyone else have anything to add before we move on this week?
No, other than the fact that I was really touched by your video that you posted this weekend this past week with your friends. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Just
I
for
got
people-
surprised. It's my 40th birthday on Wednesday, so that's why I'm kind of dipping in and out because I have like a lot of, things planned for my birthday month.
This coming Wednesday?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yes, June 11th. And so, so I have, lots of different events planned. We went to Savannah and my friends surprised my husband got my best friends from grad school to come and surprise me, which was really cool.
Very cool.
And
So are you a
then-
Cancer?
I'm a Gemini.
Oh, so you missed the mark barely?
Right.
Or?
Yeah. No, I think it's like May 22nd until like the end of June, but I don't know.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Jocelyn, do you know that Kiko and I are a day apart? It's a day apart,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Y'all have
Yeah.
told me that. And what are y'all, Cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. No, I'm a crazy Gemini.
I don't believe in that stuff. I just
But-
always find it interesting to hear what people are.
Yeah. No, I do identify as Gemini, but I think it's less bipolar, although Cody will probably disagree, and so will my husband. But I think it's more about like contradictions. So yeah, I like opposites a lot,
And we
Cody
let
can
Jocelyn
definitely
think
agree
that.
with that. I like how I'm a feminist, but Cody thinks it comes across as a misogynist. That's like Gemini in a nutshell, right there.
Yeah, a little bit of both, right?
Right? Yeah, just
Yeah.
opposite ends of the same coin, like Ballerina says.
Oh, well, that's a nice tease for what we're about to get into. So, yeah, let's roll right in.
Here are this week's reviews.
So, as Jocelyn said, the first movie this week is Ballerina, or if you want to call it by its full Christian name, From the World of John Wick, Ballerina. This is a film that is directed by Lynn Weissman, who I guess people might know as the director of the Underworld franchise, the Kate Beckinsale franchise, of which I have seen none of those movies. I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen an Underworld movie. Didn't hear great things, but yeah. So this is a movie that takes place chronologically between the events of John Wick 3 and John Wick 4. It stars Ana de Armas as an assassin trained in the traditions of the Ruska Roma organization, setting out to seek revenge after her father's death. And so this is a movie that I saw, that Jocelyn saw, that Kiko did not see, making Kiko now 0 for 5 in the John Wick franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna watch it, but then since I haven't seen 1 through 4, it felt wrong. So
Well, to be fair, I feel like Jocelyn, have you seen all of the first 4? Okay.
No. I'm just
Oh,
I was agreeing with you that I don't think you have to necessarily see any
That's-
John Wicks to
That's not what I
understand
was going to
this
say.
movie.
So,
Sorry.
because what there is in this movie is like a cavalcade of cameos of people from like
True.
all the different John Wick movies, at which like if they show up on screen, you have no context for, you have no idea what they're doing, and the parts that they played, and if you see Ian McShane's character that shows up in this, you're not going to know that he plays a part in all these movies, and his relationship with John Wick, or this is the last film appearance of Lance Reddick, who also plays a big part, who's been in other movies. And so, I mean, I do think that you need like a little bit of context, or else those cameos aren't going to hit, especially because so much of the first John Wick movies, or the first 4 John Wick movies, are world building. And I think that's been the fun thing about watching those 4 movies, is that narratively speaking, they're not the most complex movies in the world. Basically, the first movie is about John Wick getting revenge on someone killing his puppy. And basically the rest of the series is the fallout of that. And so it's really not, that complex of a thing. However, the world building takes place throughout all of these movies, where you get to see things about the hotel, like the Continental. Again, like if you don't know the rules of the Continental, that plays into this movie as well, which again, like I feel like you need to have some kind of backstory. So I actually don't think that you can come into this movie entirely fresh, and not at least like question a little bit about what's going on. But like I said, this movie takes place in between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4. Ana de Armas's character, Eve, her character starts off as like a child, where her father is killed by basically like a rival gang. And as she grows up being trained as an assassin, and basically decides once she's old enough that she's going to seek revenge on this rival gang. However, there's like a truce between the John Wick people and the other gang, and so she decides to kind of like break the truce and seek her revenge. And I think the biggest thing to say about this movie and these movies is, for me personally, the narrative is not exactly the thing that I look most towards for the John Wick movies. What I think, is the main draw of these movies is the fight choreography, the stunts, the action, the bloodshed that happens. And the movie is the narrative is kind of secondary, especially as the narrative is so simple in the first 4 movies that's kind of carried through and by, Keanu Reeves and his kind of revenge story. Here, I think that you get a really kind of like baseline, basic revenge plot where this woman is seeking revenge on the person who killed her father, and like that's kind of the extent of the movie. And she basically, works her way through the John Wick universe in order to finally get that, including interactions with and fighting, John Wick and Keanu Reeves themselves, who cameos in the movie. And I feel like, as sort of like the expansion of the John Wick universe, I don't really know that this movie adds much to the mythology of everything. It's a very bare bones, basic action film, revenge storyline, where there's nothing like exciting or new about the thing anything that happens narratively within the movie. It introduces new characters that I feel like don't really make too much of an impact. A character played by Norman Reedus, I think just sort of like is lands with a little bit of a shrug. I don't really think Norman Reedus adds anything to this mix. It is nice to see some of these old characters from previous movies, Angelica Houston, Ian McShane, Lance Reddick, all pop out throughout. And I think, it's perfectly fine to see those old characters, but you don't get anything added to their narrative or their backstory throughout all of this. But I think there are 2 things that sort of work within this movie. One is that Ana de Armas is really, really good in this part. She is completely believable, in my opinion, as like an action star. There's great fight choreography happening here. Like clearly there was a lot of work put into the stunt work. I've heard rumors, I don't know if this is true, but that the original director of the movie, of those John Wick movies, I'm trying to remember his name here, Chad Stahelski, did a little bit of some reshoots as part of the action sequences. And I feel like you can see that here. Her performance is really solid too. I just think that she's kind of like a magnetic screen presence who really is believable. Again, like I think that's the biggest part is like, do you believe this actress as an action star who's murdering a bunch of people? And I think, yes, you do. And I think through that, you get some nice different settings throughout the movie. Like you get kind of like some snowy, I don't know where exactly they're supposed to be. I don't remember exactly. But I
think it's like a German town, or maybe like in the German...
Yeah, it's in Austria. It's Hallstatt, Austria.
There you go.
And you get like some nice cinematic stuff that takes place like in this like very snowy like Austrian village that I think looks really cool. And then the second thing about the movie that I think I should say, which I think is the main kind of key point and driving force behind how I feel, is that like, does this John Wick universe movie deliver on the action sequences? And I think the answer is like 1,000% yes. This movie is really fun to watch as an action film. It's pretty... it's a 2-hour movie, and I feel like the pace is like pretty solid. I feel like there's action sequences throughout, and I feel like it just feels like an expansion. Like I watched the original John Wick a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually kind of like small and kind of grounded in terms of its action sequences, whereas this movie is like a giant blown up budget where the action sequences are massive. There's a great action sequence that happens. I feel like she's driving.
Which one?
There's one early on where she gets like crashed into. That's really great. I can't remember what she's escaping on some kind of vehicle and she gets crashed into, and that leads to something. There's a moment in like the second to third act that takes place in like an armory where everything sort of like kicks into gear. And there's like some great stuff in there involving like some grenades and stuff that happens there. There's a lot of like exploding bodies and limbs. Mm-hmm. And then for me, there's a really fun final act of the movie that takes place in this Austrian town. I think most of that is pretty great. I don't know that the sequences with John Wick are that great. I feel like John Wick doesn't really need to be in this movie, to be honest with you. But it leads to this great showdown. It leads to a really great, and this sounds stupid, but it's like there's a great flamethrower battle that happens in this movie that is just really a blast to watch. And so for me, you know, I can handle a generic revenge narrative if you're delivering me action sequences that are like above average for most of what you get. And I would say that this stuff is very, very easily above average. It's really good. And I feel like not only is it good and well executed, and I think Jocelyn has one that I didn't talk about that I'll leave for her. I'll just leave it for her. And I think that, like, does it pass muster in terms of, like, does it feel believable, and is it, you know, entertaining and big and, you know, fun, and, you know, are there exploding bodies and limbs and blood and fire and all that stuff? And I think it checks all those boxes. And I had a pretty good time watching it, even though I didn't really care too much about what was really happening within the story. So, Jocelyn, I'll go ahead and turn to you.
Okay, so I will say I did not think that I needed a John Wick movie set in a Russian ballerina academy. And then I saw this and it was like, this is everything I need right now. Like, it was just checking all of my boxes. I loved it so much. And I've only seen John Wick 1 and 2. So I don't necessarily, I think you can have like a vague understanding of what John Wick is. Maybe if you've just seen the first, I think you can still pretty much understand this, as opposed to like my husband who has seen them all, and like right when she steps out of the New York City cab, he's like, the Continental, and I'm like, well, I don't even remember what the Continental is, but as it was like happening, it kind of started, you know, bringing back memories. And like you said, seeing Ian McShane was really cool. I started like I just said, it started really bringing back all the memories from the original movies and everything that I loved about those movies. I remember, I think it's in the first one that it was Keanu and he's like on an SUV fighting, and instead of just jumping off of the SUV to get down, he like crashes into the windshield to jump off, like. Mm-hmm. And I just love those little things that they do during these fight sequences. That was when I was like, okay, I really am into this. Whatever they're doing, I am into it. And so I will say that this one just exceeded my expectations as far as fight scenes go. I think you're absolutely right. Ana de Armas was so good. I think she was perfect. And what I really loved was seeing that she was taking this seriously. Mm-hmm. I feel like, I mean, she's like an Oscar nom, right? Didn't she get nominated for Marilyn Monroe movie? Yeah. So I'm like, this Oscar nominated actress who's just stunning to look at is like actually taking this action movie seriously, and it's really appreciated because I feel like there's a lot to go on, and it's not just some dumb action movie. So you mentioned the armory and the grenades. I mean, I was literally laughing out loud, having like so much fun during that whole sequence. It was so cool. And then, of course, I have to mention the samurai. So there's a part, Kiko, where she chooses a samurai sword, and it's just like, oh my God. I started thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, Keitan, you should have gotten me a samurai sword for my 40th birthday. Like, how weird would that be? Like,
well, there's another part that I thought you were going to bring up here, which is that, but there's also a scene that takes place with an ice skate.
Oh, literally, it's on my next thing.
Okay.
So it's like, I have written on my notes, samurai / skate scene / grenades, because those were my three favorites. And what I loved about, so there's another part where she's in this Austrian town, and of course, it's like a town full of killers, which is kind of bizarre when you don't know what's happening. But she gets stuck in this almost like an ice fishing house, you know, like it's like a house around an area where there's ice in the center of it, and she finds like ice skates basically, and she just has to kind of like defend herself with them. And it reminded me at the beginning when she's doing her training and they say fight like a girl, like you're never gonna beat the men as like stronger or bigger than them, but fight like a girl. And I loved that because that's, to me, the ice skating scene. Like, you can see that she is struggling to like go up against this, you know, large man, but she's using like anything available. It's like what they teach you in self-defense, you know, like just use everything that you have at your disposal. And I'm just like getting goosebumps because to see like a female action star like in that type of a role, and to see like them be just so scrappy, I loved it.
It is interesting. Sorry to jump in, but I don't know if Kiko knows this or you know this even, but Ana de Armas actually chose and handpicked Emerald Fennell to
Oh
punch
wow!
up the movie.
Stop, Emerald. That's so cool. I love
And
it.
so I kind of wonder if that is
Yes.
like one of the things added in there.
Guarantee. I mean, yes, like done. Like that makes a lot of sense. Who's another one of my absolute favorite filmmakers right now. So 100% that makes sense. And it was such a cool thing to see. So yeah, other than that, I wish, so John Wick, Keanu Reeves makes sort of like a brief cameo at the beginning, and then he takes on a bigger role at the end. And I really wish that he had kind of just left it to the brief cameo at the beginning and not kind of played that big role at the end. The flamethrower stuff was okay. I think it was like a little much. I think they could have dialed it back maybe just a little bit. And the town stuff was a little much too, but I'm not gonna, split hairs about this. I had a blast and I really liked this movie a lot.
All right, we'll get to final thoughts and grades. Yeah, and again, for me, does it add anything to the John Wick universe story-wise? Not really. Does it need to? Also, no, not really. I think, again, Ana de Armas is completely believable in game for the action that this requires, and every bit as impressive as anything that Keanu Reeves has done as part of this role. The action sequences are up to par for what is a really high bar for this franchise. These are considered some of the best action movies of the last decade. Some people consider them some of the best action movies ever. And I feel like that was the thing I was worried about. Like, is it going to reach those heights, and is it going to be like as entertaining and fun and well done and well executed and choreographed as the other movies? And the answer is yes. I think there's so many great sequences within the movie. I was never bored throughout it. Do I think that the narrative is necessarily like great? No, but I don't think it needs to be. So for me, this gets a B-. It's a good time at the movies. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Yep, I totally agree with you as far as the action sequences. I really love the female lead, the cameos like Angelica Houston and all these people popping in. I was really glad to see that there was like a child brought in halfway through the movie, and I thought she was going to get like soldiered with a kid, and I was really glad to see that didn't happen, because I was like, that's really not the movie I want to see right now. So thankfully they stuck with I think what they knew we wanted. We wanted to see her traveling around being a badass and just having a lot of fun killing a lot of guys. So I'm gonna give it a solid B. All
right, so we will move on to our next film, The Phoenician Scheme, written and directed by Wes Anderson. This is a movie that I saw. It's a movie that Kiko saw. It's a movie Jocelyn didn't see. It is the next film, again, by Wes Anderson. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to talk about Wes Anderson because it's Wes Anderson is a director who I really, really love a lot of his stuff. And then I feel like his recent years have sort of been a decline in the quality of his output. I haven't been a huge fan of the last few. For me, the last like really good movie he made was Grand Budapest Hotel. That's, I think, the last like great movie he made. But
Moonrise Kingdom was after that, though, right?
No, that was before.
Got it.
Before Budapest, yeah. Which I like Moonrise Kingdom too. But this is about wealthy businessman Zaza Korda appoints his only daughter, a nun, as sole heir to his estate. As Korda embarks on a new enterprise, they soon become the target of scheming tycoons, foreign terrorists, and determined assassins. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I can say about my feelings on the Phoenician Scheme is that it really feels a little bit like Wes Anderson is kind of on a little bit of autopilot right now with the movies that he makes, which is that like, I think it's a great thing to be such a distinctive director that you have like a distinctive style and a distinctive look to it and a distinctive feel and tone and everything like that. But the problem with having that sort of distinctive thing is that if you do it too many times without making it like interesting, it starts to feel repetitive and like you are kind of one note. And I feel like we're starting to veer into that territory with his last few films. I think there are highlights within the movie. I think first and foremost, there are two performances that kind of stand out above the rest for me. One is Mia Thrappleton, who plays his Benicio del Toro's daughter, Liesl, who I think is really solid in her part and does a really good job. I think the highlight. What's that?
Kate Winslet's daughter.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think the highlight of the movie for me, like by far, is Michael Cera in this movie, who plays a character named Bjorn. One of those performances where he gets to do a couple of really interesting things within the movie and just is such a great fit for the tone of Wes Anderson, for the style of what he's doing. I just think he's really, really great in this movie, and I hope that he becomes a Wes Anderson staple because he's really fantastic in his part. But this movie follows this sort of like, sort of like formula that Wes Anderson has employed in recent years. And again, some to like a positive degree, some to a negative degree, where this movie basically just introduces you to its main characters, and then you sort of follow them meeting like the biggest stacked cast of actors you've met in like tiny roles where they're in like one or two scenes. And some of them are really great, which I think the highlight of this movie is a sequence that happens with Bryan Cranston and Tom Hanks and involving basketball. And I feel like that's the best scene of the movie. And it's not just them that are great in it, but you get Michael Cera and Mia Thrapleton also, doing great stuff in their parts within that scene. And then you get stuff that just like, I think doesn't really resonate, which I think is like, there's a scene that happens with Scarlett Johansson that I don't think really resonates. There's a scene that happens with Jeffrey Wright that I don't think, really adds anything. I think there's like small, tiny little jokes that happen within that. Like there's a running joke about offering people grenades that I think is like amusing. But, I was watching some of the like advertising for this movie and the promotion for it, and I see people saying hysterical, and I'm like, is this movie really hysterical? I don't think this movie is all that funny. I think that basketball sequence that I mentioned with those actors is funny, but everything else is like small, subtle jokes. And again, it's just like a cavalcade of cameos as you move throughout these sequences. And again, it's all shot the same. And look, it looks really nice. I mean, I like the way that Wes Anderson composes his shots, but it's all that same, like everything has the same look to it. The camera is always like static and then like moves over to the side. Like it's just like cookie cutter. And at this point, when the script is not like as sharp or interesting as it can be, it just starts to feel like we're hitting, all of the check boxes for what his movies can be. So for me, this falls into the more of the side of his last few movies like Asteroid City or French Dispatch, where I'm just not super into it. I think that there are highlights of it. I do like, it is fun to see Tom Hanks in a Wes Anderson movie, I guess, but like, and I think Michael Cera again is like a standout, and I think he should be in from here on out. But again, the themes of parenting and stuff like that don't really hit with me. I don't think the script is all that funny. I think Benicio del Toro is fine as a lead, but I don't think that there's anything to write home about. Especially coming off of you put someone like Ralph Fiennes in Grand Budapest, and who is like incredible in that part. Does Benicio del Toro hit those heights? I don't really think so. So for me, it just gets lost in this sort of like nothing, kind of convoluted, needlessly complicated, storyline, where again, it's just this kind of twee Wes Anderson, like you happen to have these like quirky people and their quirky jobs and their quirky, personalities. And to me, it's just starting to feel a little bit rote. And so, Kiko, I'll go ahead and move to you.
Yeah, it's funny because every time we talk about Wes Anderson, I have to bring up this little story. I think I've told you before about my when Blockbuster was a thing, and I remember back in 2001, 2002, Royal Tenenbaums had just come out on VHS, so everybody was going to Blockbuster to rent it, and I was waiting around for a copy of it to come back because there's only a certain amount of copies, right? And this little old man and this little old lady, no, maybe they weren't too old, maybe probably in their 60s. Or late 60s, and they came back with a copy, and they were wanting to get rent something else, and they told the guy like, oh, we didn't like this movie, can we rent something else? And the guy looked at it and he was like, oh, you didn't like Royal Tenenbaums? And he's like, they were like, oh no, well we actually only saw like 30 minutes of it. And then he's like, oh, you should watch the whole thing. And then they looked at him like real serious, like, well, does it get funnier? So I think like, and me on the looking on the outside, waiting for them to give it back, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? So I bring it up because you said like, is it really hilarious? I think a lot of his like quirkiness was very hilarious, like in stuff like my favorite stuff like the Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore. But I'll agree with you. This film ended up at the bottom tier of his filmography for me too. Although I just scored it enough to recommend it. So I actually went back to the interview I had with Wes Anderson back in 2014, and I found something that he told me that explains why his last 2 or 3 movies haven't done for me as much as his earlier work. And what he said was, whatever the movie is going to be, it really comes from the writing. The actors invent their performances themselves, but they work with the script. A lot of it comes from what's on the page. And so that's the problem here with this film. I thought was the business heavy plot. It's just not as fascinating as some of his other narratives, whether it's like the love triangle from Rushmore or the family drama from the Royal Tenenbaums. So this script, it's like this overarching story. It just didn't excite me about all these business dealings that he's working on. So now, are there individual characters that and performances that are likable and funny? Yeah, absolutely. I thought Benicio del Toro did a good job. I love Michael Cera too, his role in the scene, and also the scene where Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, and Riz Ahmed, I think. Yeah. They're playing basketball. I thought that was very funny. And of course, what's more impressive, like we talked about Anderson, has always been this, his keen eye for detail and the specific art direction and cinematography, which has become, unfortunately, more of a parody, I think, of itself in recent years, since 80% of his movies, look the same. It feels less grounded nowadays than it did back in the Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore. Those felt like real worlds, and this feels like something else, which it works sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. So I think at this point in his career, I think that's helped and hurt him. It's helped because there are so few directors who can say that they have a discernible style that is singular to them, but it hurts because you know exactly what you're going to get, right? So if there isn't a strong enough story there, there's little else to fall back on. So don't get me wrong, I giggled a lot during this movie. I smiled a lot. I didn't laugh out loud, right? Yeah. A lot of Anderson's whimsical humor and some of the random directorial choices, they're still effective on me. I think there's a few times where Michael Cera leaves the frame of the picture and then he pops his head back in. Yeah, things like that. I'm just gonna laugh at. It's just they're funny little things like that. So I just wish the narrative was something that I was more enthusiastic about.
How was the soundtrack? I had a question about the soundtrack. He doesn't lean on that as much as the early,
No, not at all.
The newer movies, they don't. It's all, that used to be such a great part of his movies.
It's all like display.
Yeah, where it's like, I wish he would go back to that because, like, when Gwyneth Paltrow was like walking off the bus and like Nico and it's like those moments are just incredible, and I wish he would do those again.
Well, I think the main thing that I think has like changed for, I think, in my opinion, for the worst is that, those early movies that he has doesn't have this like giant sprawling cast. You've got like 3 to 5 or 6 like really solid actors and you stay with them the whole time. But then it seems like around like maybe Moonrise Kingdom or so, he just started stacking his cast full of like 20 different giant actors and giving them all a scene or two. And then you spend like all of your movie like bouncing around between these like characters who have like 5 minutes to make an impact. And for me,
could you imagine like how many calls he gets though from actors that want to be in his movies? I'm sure.
Did you see? He came out recently and said that he's offered Jodie Foster his last like 5 movies, and she said no to all of them.
Bill Murray plays God in this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, he's in it for like 3 minutes, right? But the one that I thought was crazy, F. Murray Abraham, who got a Oscar nomination for Amadeus, is like he's sitting like in this panel of like, I don't know what they are, saints or something, and he doesn't say a word, and I think he's in it for like maybe 10 seconds, and it's like, wow. F. Murray Abraham, I think he's been in another Wes Anderson film, if I'm not mistaken, but yeah, to have him in there just to kind of like cameo for an afternoon is pretty wild to me that they're able. Might as well just bring in Daniel Day-Lewis for one line,
for a non-speaking role.
Yeah, we're at that point. But again, I don't mind the huge stars coming in and just doing one little funny thing and then taking off.
The thing, the problem I have with it is that it gives you this narrative that doesn't feel rounded because these characters don't have a chance to like make an impact. So it's always the same thing, which is that your main 2 or 3 core characters are bouncing around to a bunch of different people, and that's the structure that everything takes. Or like it's this sprawling thing like French Dispatch, or like Asteroid City had the same thing too, where you just like spend a couple of minutes with all of these characters at this place, and I don't think that anything has a chance to make an impact. So we'll get to final thoughts and grades. And again, I do think that this, fits into the more recent part of Wes Anderson's career, where I think this is bottom tier stuff. Like I said, I think the last like really good movie he made was Grand Budapest Hotel, and maybe the last great movie he made was A Fantastic Mr. Fox. I would have to think about that a little bit, but for me, again, I just don't think that the script is interesting or funny enough to set this thing apart from being, just as par for the course as the rest of his stuff. And I think, Kiko, you and I both mentioned this. It's like, again, when you have a guy who has such a distinct visual style and tone and atmosphere, if you don't have something that sets it apart, then it's just going to feel cookie cutter, and it's going to feel like this guy like playing the hits a little bit, and that's
he's one of the only ones that's been able to get away with it for so long, because you hear that a lot from directors. Oh, it's like Scorsese. If Scorsese makes a gangster movie, they're gonna be, oh, that's all he knows how to do. But nobody says that really about Anderson until recently.
Because he doesn't really stray. I mean, the furthest he's ever strayed, honestly, is making an animated movie, and that's about it. But yeah, so for me, this doesn't get the job done. It's unfortunate because I think that, he's capable of making incredible films. There is stuff to like about the visual style if you're into that kind of thing. But for me, I think the script just falls a little bit short, so I can't recommend it. I'm giving it a C+. Kiko, your thoughts and grade?
Yeah, I'll make this short. I thought the script fell short as well. For me, the Phoenician Scheme is full of Wes Anderson's, trademark whimsy and quirkiness, but the narrative never captures my full attention. So I just needed more spark in the story to pair well with the things that we all know that Anderson already does so well. So I'm at a B- on this one.
All right. We will move on to our next film, Dangerous Animals. Dangerous Animals is a film directed by Sean Byrne, and it's sort of like a mashup movie of sorts, combining the genres of shark movie and serial killer movie.
Sharksploitation.
Yeah,
that's a word.
Yeah, absolutely. The movie is described as when Zephyr, a savvy and free-spirited surfer, is abducted by a shark-obsessed serial killer and held captive on his boat. She must figure out how to escape before he carries out a ritualistic feeding to the sharks below. So again, like I said, this is sort of like a cross between a shark movie and a serial killer movie, where you have a killer who basically, has his victims get torn apart by sharks. A very ridiculous movie idea and plot that I think is better than it has any right to be, because I think it is executed with a couple of really nice points. I think, for one, I feel like the movie is like really tightly edited and nicely shot. I think it really does a nice job of ratcheting up the tension throughout the course of the movie. And it looks really great, even, for ultimately what is a small budget movie. And I think that's well done. I think that it's also nicely populated with things like a nice score that really helps amplify the tension of everything, and all of that. I think the thing that really kind of pushes it over the edge is the performances. And I think I like Hassie Harrison in this movie, who plays kind of like the Zephyr, the girl who's a surfer, who, again, it's very generic, where she's sort of like, she has issues that keeps her a loner, but yet those issues are the ones that make her a survivor. It's kind of like classic sort of like final girl kind of tropes within all of that. But I think the thing that really makes this movie work is Jai Courtney, who I feel has never been better. He's an actor who I feel like, has tried to kind of like break through Hollywood as like an action star. He was in like Terminator Genesis, which is a terrible movie that he gives a terrible performance in. He's also in the Suicide Squad movies as well.
Do you remember when he was like the it guy? Like, he was the one that he was, I think it was around like 2014 when he did the Die Hard movie. Like, everybody was like, oh, this guy's like gonna be the next, whatever.
Yeah.
And then and now you see him today.
Yeah. And I think it didn't really like work there. But in this movie, you have Jay Courtney doing his like native Australian accent. You have him sort of like, how can I say this politely? He's in like a character actor body type in this movie as opposed to being in like action star shape. And he's just like completely hamming everything up in this movie to the degree where he is extremely entertaining. And I feel like the Australian accent like really helps this character seem like really like maniacal and kind of crazy, but also kind of charming, which I think this character kind of needs this element of it to where he's like faking being like a really nice, like over the top kind of gregarious guy, and then ends up being like a kind of like a ruthless killer. I just think that he's so good in this movie that it actually like makes this movie better than it should be. Because I feel like if you take a movie like this, which has like a ridiculous premise, you throw in, the final girl elements that are a little bit like generic. But you think about, this idea that it's a serial killer who hunts people and then feeds them to sharks. Like, it's kind of a ridiculous movie, but I feel like Jay Courtney is just so committed to this part that he's like unsettling. He's funny. He's really magnetic to watch. And I feel like when you combine that with like technical elements of the movie that are like a taut sense of editing, good score, it ends up being like a pretty entertaining thriller, a movie that I like on paper, I think sounds like it should be like corny and dumb, but I think like, like has like its legitimately gripping moments. So I think that it's sort of like played seriously, but like, to use a word that the kids, or a phrase the kids use, like Jay Courtney understood the assignment here. And I think he really shines in this movie and kind of makes the whole thing for me. So, Jocelyn, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Dangerous Animals?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm torn about this one because, like you said, the premise is ridiculous. Like, there's moments where, like, they are, being strung up, and I'm like, I couldn't help but laugh. It was like they were swinging over the ocean, and I just didn't find it scary or suspenseful at all. It just made me laugh that they were like in this gigantic swing, and it just seemed really funny in the visual. Just I couldn't help but laugh.
You wanted them to say wee.
Exactly, like they're swinging around up there, And so anyway, I'm sorry, that was just like something I could not get past. And I disagree. I think the lead female was not good. I don't think she was delivering her lines well. I just couldn't, like, at one point I started, like, just paying attention to her when she's struggling, and she's just literally moaning the whole movie when she isn't delivering her lines poorly. So I think she's very pretty, and I think she definitely brought like the beachy, surfer vibe element to it. I just think her performance wasn't good. Because it's like a rom-com in the middle of a Jaws movie, it's like Jaws rom-com. There's like this romantic lead, which I thought he was good. But I just couldn't get behind like watching this rom-com in the middle of a, serial killer movie. So that also kind of threw me. I will definitely agree with Cody as far as Jay Courtney. Like, he just like kills this. Like, he's so charismatic. He's so terrifying and believable. And I think Cody's just like totally on the nose as far as his performance goes. That was definitely my favorite part about this movie. But then I also will say that it just didn't make any sense. Like, there was really no motivation. Like, so he's just this like super creepy, terrible serial killer, I just wish that they had maybe given us more about him, who he is, why he does this, that kind of stuff. Because otherwise he's just like, oh, it's just some, like guy, dude's gonna kill. Like, like, I guess it's like the predator, the whole Jaws, like he's also a predator. And I guess maybe that's the line that I'm trying to draw. But other than that, I think it was okay. I thought it was just typical serial killer suspenseful stuff. Like, exactly, like, how it's going to end. I don't want to give anything away as far as like who lives and dies, but you pretty much know everything, how it's going to play out, basically. And it didn't really throw any surprises in that regard as far as like the narrative goes, or any like plot twists or anything like that. So I'm going to just leave it there as far as like, I'm kind of torn on this one.
Okay. Kiko, your thoughts?
Oh, I really, really wanted to like this movie. I did. I was like into the idea. I thought it was a neat little twist on the serial killer movie. I'm glad that there's not this masked killer running around with a meat hook or a machete. I think there's an interesting underlying psychological dread behind the plot that just never comes to the surface. Okay, and I'm gonna break the tie here. I thought Hassie Harrison, who's actually from Texas and has a crazy Southern twang in real life, is great as this sort of hippy dippy surfer chick. I thought she was cast well as someone who can fend for herself and go up against this.
Again, we were referring to Jocelyn being a misogynist. That's the point. That's
and then Jay Courtney. I mean, I brought that up about he was supposed to be the next big thing. I love that he's hamming it up here and sinking his teeth, no pun intended, into the role. But there wasn't much else here besides the two main characters butting heads physically every time Zephyr escapes, which happens like 3 or 4 times. So I thought it got a little bit repetitious. I wish there were more mind games or something that went a little deeper than this average girl is handcuffed to the basement type thriller, because there are nods to things like Silence of the Lambs, and the way that Jay Courtney's character's dancing kind of reminded me of the Buffalo Bill scene, and then and the way he kidnaps her as well, kind of reminded me of that as well. And then the weakest part, and probably ruined the last third of the movie, was the love story between Zephyr and some rando dude she meets on the beach. I thought it was absolutely worthless. None of that relationship felt real or important. So when he tries to write in like a knight in shining armor, it was just trash for me. I hated it. I wanted him to be fed to the sharks as soon as he showed up on the screen. So I didn't like any of. I don't know who the guy is or who the actor is. I didn't look him up, but yeah, I thought that he came in and that was a unnecessary character overall. So yeah, that's where I am with Dangerous Animals. Again, Dangerous Animals. It's a play on the who's the most dangerous animal? Is it man or is it shark? I wish they would have gone a little bit deeper with that and kind of explored that idea, but it sadly did not.
Yeah. All right, we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And again, I would say the movie is definitely more serial killer than shark movie. There's only a couple of interactions with sharks, we'll say. And I feel like this is a movie, given the idea that it's kind of silly in its story and, doesn't really do anything new with either of those movies. It could have been so much worse in with a lesser villain performance here. But for me, I think that Jay Courtney is just so good in this that it pushes it over the edge to being able to recommend it. Because I think that his performance in the movie floats the entire thing. And I literally think this thing works only because his performance is so good in it. And so if you want to watch an actor really locked into a villain performance, I'm going to recommend it on the strength of that. So I'm going to give it a B-. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Well, I'm going to clarify that I think she is great as a action actress. I really liked her performances when she was
her physical performance.
Yes, thank you. Her physical performance. I think that a lot of the stuff at the beginning when they're character building, it was really that's when I was struggling to believe anything that she was saying. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify. But I just saw a lot of the visual stuff really kind of being silly. And like Cody just mentioned, there really isn't a ton of shark people interaction. And, there's just a lot of stuff she would have definitely not been able to pull herself on that boat, back up on that boat out of the water. Do you remember she pulls herself out of the water onto a very large. Anyway, that was just another ridiculous moment where I'm that's absolutely physically impossible. But, there's a great white chomping down people. So why am I, trying to find reality in this movie? Again, Jay Courtney was excellent as this psychopath. But I can't recommend it. So I'm going to do a C+.
And Kiko.
So for me, Dangerous Animals, I thought it had a lot of potential. I was hoping to, that it would trigger more fear and more a threatening vibe for me. But especially since it's, there's this different twist on the serial killer formula. But for me, I was just disappointed that there was less psychological tension than I would have liked. Hassie as Zephyr, she brings this free-spirited kind of toughness to her character. But But overall, the cat and mouse things that they get a bit too repetitious for my taste. Jay Courtney is good. I wish there was more shark stuff. I guess we needed more shark stuff. I was hoping because I mean they just kind of dangle them there and then they drop them in and they get the bottoms eaten. And no, that's about it. I thought they were gonna get pretty gory, but I guess
You
not.
sound like such a dad. They're bottoms. Their buns got it.
Their buns. So yeah, that's where I am with dangerous animals, and I didn't. I'm giving this a very average C.
All right. So we'll move on to our final film, Predator: Killer of Killers. This is a film that is on Hulu as we speak, and it is an animated film directed by Dan Trachtenberg. Now, Dan Trachtenberg directed Prey, which was a Predator prequel, and he's also directing Predator: Badlands, which is the next live action Predator movie. So in the middle here, he's also directed this animated film, which is basically an anthology movie that is, again, animated, that takes place across basically 3 different stories that ultimately converge with some Vikings, some samurais in feudal Japan, and a World War II pilot, and their interactions with Predator throughout the course of history, leading to become the prey. Let's just leave it at that, right? And yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this movie because I feel like I'm sort of like predisposed to not liking this because I am not a fan of anthology movies. I think, for starters, I think this has kind of like an animation style that the thing that is always my reference point for this is like the latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, where you can kind of see like it has like a hand-drawn kind of element to it where, you can see like brushstrokes on the characters' designs. But I don't really like the way that the action moves within this animation style. To me, it doesn't feel very fluid. It feels kind of herky-jerky, and I don't really love the way that it looks. This is very much an R-rated animated movie, so this is not one to take your family to or sit down with your family.
But it's a cartoon.
It is a cartoon, but there is lots of limbs being blown off, decapitations. And I feel like for the first, 2/3 of the movie is basically just like a highlight reel of Predator kills, right? You get to see all the different, styles in which a Predator can rip someone limb to limb. And that's sort of like what it feels like for the first 2/3. And this is sort of the problem I have with anthology movies, which is I find that it either runs into one of 2 problems. Number one is that none of the stories are enough to really hook into, so you can't really get attached to any of the stories. So nothing ends up having an impact. Or there's a story that's really good, and then you sort of do away with it to go to something else, and it's not as good as what you've watched. You know what it reminds me of? Do either of you watch cooking shows? This is the classic when someone makes a dish 2 ways, right? Which is now, instead of being judged on one dish, you're splitting it apart and you're doing your sort of steak 2 ways, and you're now being judged on 2 different dishes instead of being judged on one.
No, it's still one movie.
It's not, because you're splitting it into distinct parts.
Did you like Buster Scruggs?
No, because of the same fucking thing.
Buster Scruggs was my favorite movie that year.
Because if there's 1 or 2 chapters that don't work, you have 1/3 of your movie that doesn't work.
It's those were maybe leading up to that third that worked so well. They're maybe also teasing you or getting you ready to see that part of it.
Plus also this one does something that I don't think too many anthology movies do, and they bring everything together at the end.
They do.
Exactly.
They do, but I don't think that they
Great
do.
point.
But they don't do it in a way where I feel like the first 2 stories get an arc. I feel like it's
for sure.
It's just you get to see those characters in context and then you bring them together. And I feel like that's the problem with the anthology, is that there's not enough space for any of this stuff to have an arc to it. I think the 3rd story in this of the fighter pilot is the successful one. I think that one is good because it has an arc to it. and you get to see it through. You get to establish that character a little bit. The first 2 stories of this movie make 0 impact for me. I don't care about anything going on. I was quite honestly kind of bored in the first 2/3 of this movie with these first 2 stories. And it's a highlight reel of predator kills. That's all it is for me. And so eventually when it starts to come together, and even though it does kind of mesh with all of these characters interacting in some way, for me, 2/3 of the movie has already been spent on something that I really didn't care about all that much. Like, is the kill stuff interesting? Like, sure, yeah, it's fun to watch these kills, and some of them. I don't think that they're all completely successful. But again, for me, it's this typical, like, my reaction, and again, this is a personal opinion on anthology stuff, where I feel like 2 of the chapters are completely uninteresting to me, and there's 1 chapter in this thing that works for me. So for me, I can't I can't overlook the fact that 2/3 of this thing doesn't work for me. So, Kiko, I'll go ahead and go to you.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan as much as most people were with Prey, even though I love the idea. I just love the fact that this alien, nobody really thought about, oh, well, you know what, if this creature has probably been here longer than we have, so it's probably gonna, go back centuries and centuries. So I love that idea. I didn't gel with the story itself, but I like that they took it back to that. I like that now we get more of that. We get this offshoot Predator movies where now it's going back to the Vikings, now it's going back to the samurais, a World War II story. I love this 3-part anthology. I thought they did a great job. So of the 3, I thought the Viking story with the Viking mother, who's another very strong. It's interesting because there's 3 out of the 4 movies we're reviewing have really strong female characters, so sure. I think that's pretty cool. But so I thought she was like the strongest. There was this long, great fight scene at the beginning where she's trying to break this perimeter fort that went on for quite a while until she got to the person that she wanted to kill. I thought that was a great shot. I'm totally into this animation, the 2D 3D mix. I love it. I loved it in Mutant Mayhem, wherever else they've used it before. I don't even know, other than Mutant Mayhem, I can't think of too many other ones. It looks kind of like Spider-Man ish, but it's not the same thing. I think that let me see. I was into every single one of the beheadings, all of the gore. My son walked in again. Hey, you're watching a cartoon. Why didn't you tell me? You can't watch this. So I thought the animation was incredible. I love all the massive predators, the monsters themselves, because the predator has always been like this bulky monster. It's always been bulkier than regular humans since the original one. I mean, it was even bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original one. But the fact that they made them like these like huge monster things, I thought that made it even more fun. And I think they make them a little bit more big and are bigger in Prey as well. So this is the second of the Predator spinoffs. The director, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. I got an adrenaline rush that I needed this weekend from this. I didn't see Ballerina, so I'm hoping that we got the same feel. That's where I mean. I thought the tie-in at the end, I don't think you're giving it enough credit to where it didn't make too much sense how they got together since they're from different centuries. Maybe I missed something on that aspect.
You didn't miss
of it.
anything.
But I mean, it's if you can overlook that and kind of I mean, they're on a alien spaceship, so I'm not sure how that happens.
Time and I mean,
right? There's like
time is linear, like.
Sure.
Right. That's how I took it. So I didn't really.
What is it from?
I didn't really whine too much about that part, but once they get back on and team together, I thought that was a great way to tie everything in, and it ends in a really great cliffhanger, which I'm hoping that there'll be a second one here. So, I enjoyed it.
Was it time is a flat circle? I was trying to think of the True Detective quote. Time is a flat circle. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Thank you. I put this on not expecting to like it at all, and kind of was like, what the hell is this? Like, okay, we're in Valhalla talking about Vikings, and now there's a predator, and there's like tons of heads being chopped off, and I'm like, what is happening? And then when the samurai stuff started, I was a little more like, okay, like what's happening now? And then I was really on board. I really loved the samurai story, and especially the end when you think that the 2 guys are still fighting and they both have green blood on their swords. I was just like, oh, I get it. This is so cool. That's when I was like, okay, I get with this movie. It's doing a lot for me now. And the fact that the filmmaker did Prey makes a lot of sense because I also really loved Prey. And I just love that he went back and did an animated movie. Because I really did not expect to like this movie as much as I did. And I really liked the animation too. There was a part where they're in the World War II and they're in their, airplanes, and it looks like almost like watercolor. It's like really beautiful. Yeah, I just really did not expect to like a movie about predators, chopping up people as much as I did. Whether or not it makes sense or not, or whether or not they kind of tied together. I just think it was like I went on this journey and I didn't hate it. I feel like it was worth my time, and I'll even recommend it to people who like this type of movie. Like I told my husband, I was like, "Oh, you should definitely watch this movie. You're gonna love it." And it's got like freaking fighter pilots and like
samurais,
Viking, well that's
moms,
all me right
Viking
there.
Moms.
Yeah, he's more into the Viking stuff. Yeah, pissed off Viking moms. She was badass, man. She was really scary. So that's where I'm gonna land. That I was just like, this was a surprise, and I did not expect to like it as much as I did.
All right, we'll get into final thoughts and grades. And yeah, again, for me, I think it just falls to the trappings of the sort of anthology stuff that is just not my thing. Where I feel like I think 2/3 of this movie aren't interesting enough on their own as their own chapters. And so I don't think that when they all come together that it ends up being all that fulfilling. I think that the last third of the movie is the best part of it. But for me, I feel like it doesn't sort of outweigh what I think are kind of like a dull first 2/3. So I'm giving it a C+. Kiko, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I'll make this short. I thought Killer of Killers, the animation is top notch, and it really delivers on the violence and gore that should probably be present in a Predator movie. So most anthologies don't tie everything back together, and I think this one did it in a way that it was very clever, and I can't wait to see sequel. So I'm giving this a solid B.
And Jocelyn.
I'm gonna say that yes, I agree. Like the first two parts maybe aren't as strong, but I think the timing is perfect. Like it's very brief. Like it keeps moving. They don't really make you sit in not knowing what's happening very long. And I think it's just well paced and well done. And I really liked it. I'm gonna do a B-.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week. So next week we have a trio of theatrical films that include the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. We also have the Celine Song movie Materialist, her follow-up to my favorite movie of the past 5 years, Past Lives. We also have The Life of Chuck, the new Mike Flanagan, Stephen King adaptation. In addition to that, we also have an Apple TV Plus movie that comes out. I don't know if we'll cover it. We'll see. But it is called Echo Valley, starring Julianne Moore and Sydney Sweeney. A movie I don't know anything about. I just know that it's coming out.
You just bring it up because you want to see it because it has Sydney Sweeney in it. That's just...
Yeah. I mean, that's an automatic watch for me, I think.
Are you going to buy her bathwater?
Again, no, I have enough already.
You've taken enough already is what you mean.
Yeah. All right. So if you want to reach out to us, you can find us anywhere on social media looking up CineSnob. You can also find our YouTube channel where we post our episodes of this show as well as interviews. And we have 2 extra podcasts, CineSnob Sessions and Somos Hollywood, which are Kiko's interview shows. Kiko, do you have anything interview-wise coming up on the site this week?
Yeah, definitely. I have an interview with Hassie Harrison. We just talked about her.
Nice.
So she's the lead of Dangerous Animals. So I got to speak with her. I got to speak to Catalina Sandino Moreno, the Oscar-nominated actress from Maria Full of Grace. She was featured in Ballerina in a smaller role. Mm-hmm. And then actor named Rick Gonzalez, who's been around for a while. He's actually the voice of the young Latino pilot in the 3rd act of Killer of Killers. So, oh, you know what? I also have my Walter Day and Billy Mitchell interview that I'm going to be putting out for the documentary Arcades and Love Songs, where I asked Billy Mitchell if I should give up my childhood dream of one day defeating Mike Tyson in the NES game Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, something that I haven't been able to do in over 40 years. So he gave me some great advice on that and whether or not I should just, hang up the hat and forget about it. It's never.
I mean, this is like asking Michael Jordan if you should give up your dream of dunking here at this point.
Exactly. Great. Yeah, great metaphor there. Great analogy.
This is the guy from King of Kong.
King of Kong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that's crazy.
He held the the record for a few years. They would go back and forth.
When does that movie come out? Do you know?
I think it already hit some streaming platforms already. So, but it's mostly about the Walter Day's singing career. So it's not. I mean, there's some video game stuff in it.
Well, it is directed by the guy who made Undefeated, right?
I want to say yes.
That's a movie. That's a documentary that I absolutely love.
Or it might have been a producer. I'm not sure. It might have been the director.
Oh, it might have been you know what? It is a producer. Yeah. The guy who directed it has been a producer on that, and like he was a producer on another movie I love called Finders Keepers.
Oh yeah, Finders Keepers is great. I tell people to watch that movie all the time.
That's one I recommend to people all the time when I can. That one's great.
Tell real quick. Tell Jocelyn what that movie's about if she hasn't seen it.
Yeah,
you haven't seen Finders Keepers? So it's a documentary about this guy who is now sadly passed away. But basically, a guy ends up buying a storage unit, and inside the storage unit, there's a grill, and inside the grill is a guy's like mummified leg.
Yes, I think you told me about this.
And basically, there's like a custody battle over this guy's leg. And
well, why does the guy that finds it want to keep it?
Because he wants to be famous, basically.
Got it. Makes sense. Got it.
He has these dreams of like being like a local celebrity, and so he calls himself like the Footman because he's the guy who found who found it. It's it's like, and you know, Kiko and I talk about this all the time, how you have these sort of like stranger than fiction, like
I literally was gonna say that
documentary stuff.
Yes.
And Finders Keepers is sort of like along those lines of like King of Kong and American Movie and like all those movies that just find like this very special type of weirdo and follows him around.
You literally, if you wrote it, people would say it was like so ridiculous.
Yeah. So you should definitely watch Finders Keepers. It's incredible. It's really great. Yeah, I always direct people to it. I think it's on Pluto TV, Crackle. I'm looking up where it's showing, but
what does a Pluto membership go for
these
days?
It's always been free, Kiko. Pluto's always been free.
Oh, has it? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know all of the streamers that I look at.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. So we've got our movies for next week. Jocelyn's excited to finally see Materialist after months of watching.
I have a conspiracy theory about it.
Jocelyn has a theory about Materialist that she's been shouting from the rooftops that we will see within a matter of a week.
I'm starting to lose hope. I'm starting to lose hope as, you know, people are starting to see it and nothing's being mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this a secret?
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, we'll talk about it
when
off
it happens.
Mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
and then we'll bring it up next week. Right?
Yeah, we'll see if Jocelyn was right or not. But that's gonna do it. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.